Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's Boston Regional Community Meeting for the Bus Network Redesign Project. My name is Reagan Checchio, and I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's meeting. Next slide. I would like to note that all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire system, our entire service area. If you have any questions or concerns, please visit mbta.com, Title 6, that's title with a VI, to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Next slide. I would also like to remind everyone of the rules for participating in this meeting, as well as let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. While we wish we were able to do this meeting in person, we're hoping that we have designed an online public meeting that will be interactive and provide opportunity for us to have a conversation together. Before we can begin that conversation, I do have to review a few technical aspects of the Zoom platform. Next slide. We have ASL interpreters tonight for the meeting. If you would like to view the ASL interpreter at all times, please keep your view settings to gallery mode. And to pin the interpreter's video, click the ellipses in the top right corner of the interpreter's video and select Pin Video. You will need to repeat this process each time we switch interpreters. We also have interpreters tonight who are translating the meeting into Spanish and Mandarin. If you require these services, please click the interpretation button on your screen, the globe icon, and select which language you wish to hear. We are also going to be holding small group discussions later in the meeting. If you would like to be in a Spanish language or Mandarin language small group discussion, please message a project team member in the chat so we can move you into the appropriate discussion section at that time. At this moment, I will ask all English speakers to please select English as their chosen language. This will allow you to hear translated non-English comments during the Q&A. Next slide. You can also view closed captions by clicking the closed captions feature and selecting from the options shown. Show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen. View full transcript will display the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. Next slide. All attendees are muted during the presentation to prevent excessive background noise. If you are viewing this meeting on a computer, you can toggle speaker view to see the presentation more prominently. If you are on a smartphone, swipe to change views. You may use the chat button to submit a typed question or comment at any point during the meeting. The chat is not open, but if you direct your question to ask a question, we will receive the comment in question. We will be monitoring the chat during the presentation, but please hold your substantive comments and questions for the breakout sessions and then the question and answer period. You can ask your substantive questions during the small group discussion. If you have a technical issue, though, please message a project team member in the chat and we will respond as soon as possible. All of us who are project team members have project team listed after our name in the participant list. When you submit a question, these questions are not visible to other attendees, and we are going to try to get to as many as possible during the Q&A portion of the meeting. During the small group discussions, the chat will be visible to everyone, and we encourage you to keep any comments in the chat respectful to other attendees. If you use inappropriate language, you will be removed from the meeting. So now, after all of that, I would like to introduce Caroline Van Ness from MassDOT, who will begin the main presentation. Caroline?
Thanks, Reagan. So we're very excited to welcome everyone to our Bus Network Redesign Boston regional meeting to talk about our proposed changes there. Just to kind of walk through a little bit tonight, we're going to give a presentation, and I am joined by my wonderful colleague, Rob Guptel, who's the Director of Service Planning, Then we will do small group breakouts, and then we will come back to the main room for a larger group discussion with Q&A. But before we get started, we're really excited that we are joined tonight by our General Manager, Steve Poftak. So with that, I will turn it over to you, GM, for opening remarks.
Thanks so much, Caroline, and thanks so much to everybody on the Better Bus Project team. It's really exciting to be here today for the launch of the brand new Bus Network map that's part of our larger Bus Network Redesign program, and to kick off the Boston Regional meeting to talk about the entire program, but obviously the map itself. I think everyone on this call already knows how essential transit is to the region's economy, especially as one of the foundational elements of our region's recovery from the pandemic. And I think, one of the things that this pandemic brought into sharp relief was how much our bus system serves some of our most transit-dependent populations. Really, the impetus for this program, which started previous to the pandemic, was to take advantage of the dynamic change that this region has seen. Really, the bus network has not seen a comprehensive redesign, if ever, but certainly not for decades. And it's clear that this region has changed. The places that people work, the places that people live, the different paths of travel that they want have changed so much. And we want to have a bus network that adapts to this change. So it's really exciting to share this map with you. This really is a once in a generation opportunity to expand and improve our bus network and to reinvigorate our entire bus system. So that means not only a number of new reimagined routes, but also it is an increase in service. We're going to increase bus service by 25% across the entire network and by 70% on weekends. This allows us to give hundreds of thousands of riders access to high frequency service, which, if you haven't heard us define the term, I'll do it now. That means a bus stopping every 15 minutes or less throughout the service day. Now, with these improvements, there are going to be trade-offs, and change can sometimes be challenging, but the benefits are really clear. It's a better and more equitable service for our bus riders that reflects the way this region has changed. And it's a bus network that's simpler and easier to understand with higher frequency and better connections. So we're so excited to have so many of you joining us. We're looking forward to hearing from all of you, particularly our bus riders. Just to be clear, this is our bus network proposal, but it is a draft proposal. The map will change meaningfully based on the feedback we get from you and folks across the state at our various, or across the region, I should say, at the various meetings we are holding. So we're looking forward to receiving your feedback and improving the map as we go. So with that, let me get out of the way and hand it back to Caroline. And thanks so much for coming tonight.
Thanks so much, General Manager. And before we get started, we'd like to do a brief poll. So Reagan or Amanda, can you guys open the poll? So the question is, do you ride the bus regularly, at least once a month? Oh, getting a lot of, great to see so many bus riders in the meeting tonight. Okay, I think we can close it now. We have about almost close to 90% of folks in the virtual room tonight who are regular bus riders. So that's wonderful to see. All right, so let's get started with our presentation. So what is Bus Network Redesign? I hope that folks in the room tonight know about this project, but just in case, this is a real opportunity to reimagine the MBTA's bus network to better reflect the travel needs of the region and create a better experience for current and future bus riders. We are doing this because the region has changed, but our bus network has not necessarily changed with it. And transit is essential to the region's economy, and the bus serves our most transit-dependent populations. So it's really essential that our bus network adapts to change. The redesign is well coordinated with other initiatives to maximize benefits to our riders. So it is coordinated with Fleet and Facilities, which provides more fleet to run the service, as well as the garage space to add more buses to the fleet. We have Bus Network Redesign, which is again really focused on service overall and what service should look like. And then we have Bus Priority, which enables us to implement high frequency and reliable service throughout and helps to identify where we want to implement Bus Priority throughout the region. Our project's also coordinated with other initiatives that are working to make the bus network better, including making bus stops accessible, modernizing bus stop amenities, fare transformation, improving rider information and dispatching tools, and a host of all sorts of other initiatives that are working to make the bus experience better for riders. Municipal partnerships are key to the success of this. So to increase service in congested corridors, we need effective transit priority. And in some cases, transit priority will be absolutely critical for implementation. For example, we know in the Longwood medical area, we will need transit priority to ensure a positive rider experience. Increased service will also require new and expanded layover locations. We will need bus shelters and accessible bus stops in new locations, and we'll need new and upgraded garages to operate this service. We've listened to our riders since we've launched the Better Bus Project a few years ago, and these are the main things that we heard. Nothing, super new here, but really important to note that people want the bus to go where people want to travel when they need it. They want a bus that's simple to use and understand and navigate, is fast, frequent, and reliable, and serves the people who need it most. So overall, what are we trying to do? First and foremost, leading with equity. And that means prioritizing the needs of those who depend on buses and need frequent, reliable service, specifically improving access and quality of service for our transit critical populations. That includes low-income populations, people of color, seniors, people with disabilities, or people who live in households with few or no vehicles. We want to create more frequent service where there are more people in busy neighborhoods. We want to create more all-day service, 7-day-a-week service. We want to create new connections to more places, including non-downtown centers. And we want to create a network that's simpler and easier to use. So what does our new proposal for a new bus network get you? First and foremost, when you see this proposal, it is a 25% increase in bus service across the network. And that also includes a 70% increase in weekend service. 275,000 more residents would be near high frequency service as the GM defined that. That means 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m., 15 minutes or better service. Over 100,000 residents of color gain access to this high frequency service. 40,000 low-income households will gain access to high-frequency service, and overall 200,000 more residents would gain access to fast and frequent service to the Longwood medical area. We are doubling the amount of high-frequency service offered today. So currently we have 15 corridors that run high-frequency service, and we're moving to 30. Today, only 27% of weekday service is frequent, and in this plan, it's 50%. Places like Everett, Lynn, Medford, South Boston, West Roxbury currently have no all-day high-frequency routes, and now they would. Places like the Longwood medical area only have 2 frequent routes, and now it would have 6. The Seaport and Kendall also get new frequent service. And we're focusing on frequent bus service on corridors and connections that are not served by the rapid transit network in order to really create a universal network that complements one another. We're also creating better connections to more places. So we're improving access to these top regional destinations with fast and frequent service. And that's defined by trips having a transit option that is competitive with driving alternatives. So for Longwood medical area, as I mentioned, 200,000 more residents gain access to fast and frequent service. South Boston waterfront, 180,000 residents, Back Bay, 50,000, and Kendall Square, 58,000. So with that, I will now turn it over to my colleague, Rob, to talk about some of the changes specific to Boston.
Thank you very much, Caroline. My name is Rob Guptel. I'm the Director of Service Planning at the MBTA, and I am very pleased to be with you here tonight. So we'll start by taking a broader view, looking at the entirety of Boston. As we saw just a couple slides ago, the number of high-frequency routes is doubling, And you can see in this map, everywhere that is blue is a high frequency service. Again, that's from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m., 15 minutes or better frequency across that entire service day. In terms of the number of high frequency services in Boston that touch Boston itself, we go from 11 to 21 with new high frequency services to the Longwood Medical Area, to Matapan, Dorchester, Roxbury, the Seaport, and to Cambridge. There's also new frequent services between Charlestown and South Boston via the downtown, and between Upham's Corner and Back Bay. There's a 10% increase in midday, evening, and weekend service, and 176,000 residents are getting better frequency and better access to the Longwood Medical Area. Now we'll start to look at some of the neighborhoods and get into a little bit more detail. I'll be going pretty quickly through these routes. So if you have specific questions about any of these specific routes, feel free to ask those questions in the breakout room. Next slide, please. We will start in East Boston and Winthrop. Here we have down serving Maverick, we have Route 116. You'll notice that there's not a Route 117 anymore. We are proposing to, in effect, combine routes 116 and 117 to turn it into a single high frequency route. No longer would we need to coordinate two separate routes, but it could be one single route that we could operate hopefully more consistently. There is also a new high frequency service connecting Wood Island into Chelsea and continuing up to Malden. This would replace Route 104 in Malden and portions of the 112, which go to Wood Island and connect to Chelsea. Again, this would be a new high frequency service where one does not exist presently. Other routes that are serving this area and new connections that are provided, we have Route 120 that serves Jeffreys Point and goes up to Orient Heights and the Waldemar neighborhood as it does today, but would extend up through the new Suffolk Downs development and into Winthrop. Also, Route 119 would change from what it does today while still serving Revere and connecting to Linden Square and Northgate Mall. It would extend down to Orient Heights and into Winthrop as well. Winthrop would thus get a one-seat ride to places that it does not currently have that one-seat ride. Next slide, please. In Charlestown, there is a lot of high-frequency service that is passing through Sullivan Square. The Route 109 is extended all the way to Harvard Square with a high-frequency service. The Route 101 connects Medford, all the way down in through Sullivan Square, through Charlestown, into Leechmere and Kendall, providing connections with the red, green, orange lines. We also have Route 111 that currently today does not serve Charlestown, but we are in conversations with the City of Boston and Mass DOT to talk about getting a bus stop on North Washington Street to serve the Charlestown neighborhood. And then T7 is a new high frequency route that replaces Route 93, continues into the downtown area, and then continues all the way from North Station to South Station into the Seaport and into South Boston. Next slide, please. In the Back Bay, Beacon Hill, downtown Boston, North End, South End, and West End. All those areas. This shows some of the routes that I just talked about. The T7 that I had just mentioned serves that spine down Congress Street through what we are working with the City of Boston on, of dedicated transit lanes connecting North Station and South Station, going to South Boston and going to Sullivan Square in Charlestown. Routes that would be elevated to high frequency include the 9. This serves South Boston and connects to Copley. That would be increased from its current frequency to a new high frequency service. The T8 is a new route that connects Copley with Boston Medical Center and continues down to JFK UMass, connecting to Upham's Corner. That connection between Upham's Corner and Back Bay was one of the highest origin destination pairs that we saw when we looked at the data that Caroline mentioned earlier. So that's a very exciting new connection to provide. Some other routes that are not high frequency, but are some exciting new connections that we have. Route 42, which starts at Forest Hills and goes to Nubian Square, we would extend it up Albany Street and provide a connection to Broadway, serving that corridor along Albany Street. There's also a change to what we're proposing for the Silver Line. This will be SL4 and SL5. Today, it's hard to coordinate those two separate routes on the Washington Street corridor. By combining it into a single route, we can hopefully provide more frequent, more consistent service. This new route would have a new combined terminus in downtown Boston that would serve South Station, but would turn around a different way than the current SL5 or SL4 does today. Next slide, please. In South Boston, there are several routes that are promoted to be high frequency. One is the 7 that today operates very frequently during the peaks, but not at all frequently during the off peaks on the weekdays and on Saturdays. The 7 doesn't even operate on Sundays. This would make it a high frequency service, which would operate weekdays, Saturdays, Sundays, all at a high frequency level. And that 7 connection, as I mentioned earlier, would connect all the way through downtown Boston from South Station to North Station into Charlestown. The T9, as I mentioned in the last slide, connects to Copley. It's the existing routing today, but it would be promoted to high frequency service. There's a new high frequency route that provides a new connection that does not exist today. That is the T12. This would serve Northern Ave and the courthouse that Route 4 used to serve. And it would go through the seaport via D Street, connecting to Andrew, and then continuing through Boston Medical Center over to Longwood Medical Area, and finally terminating in Brookline Village. This was also a path that we saw lots of origin destination pairings on. In terms of the Silver Line, we are proposing some changes to make the SL1 and SL3 run a little bit more efficiently. Today, the SL1 and SL3, once they serve Silver Line Way, they have to perform a rather circuitous routing to get back on the highway to cross the Ted Williams Tunnel. Under this proposal, the SL1 and SL3 would no longer serve Silver Line Way, allowing them to get onto the highway more quickly and saving time for people traveling between the airport and Chelsea and South Station. At the same time, The SL2 would continue to serve Silver Line Way, but we would change the SL2 to be a peak-only service, representing the level of demand that we see on the SL2 that is much more peak-oriented, which means people traveling largely between 7 and 9 a.m. and between 4 and 7 p.m. The final route that I'd like to mention is Route 10. This connects today City Point with Back Bay. We're flipping the tails, one might say, between the 8 and the 10, where the 8 is what is going to Back Bay now. So we would have the 10 continue to Ruggles the way that the 8 does today. We feel like that would provide new connections to the Orange Line and areas to the west of the city that South Boston does not have today. And then finally, Route 11 would become much more of a local South Boston service, terminating at Broadway and running between Broadway and City Point. Next slide, please. Moving to the south in Dorchester, we have Route 8 that I had mentioned previously that goes from Harbor Point via JFK, UMass to Copley. Other high frequency routes, Route 15 is a key bus route today. This would continue to be a high frequency route, and we would consistently have it serve Fields Corner. Today, Route 15 terminates sometimes in Kane Square, sometimes in Fields Corner, but under this proposal, it would consistently serve the Red Line at Fields Corner. Route 16 would also be promoted to a high frequency service. Route 16 connects Forest Hills and Andrew, and it would also be simplified such that it would always run the same routing regardless of the time of day or day of week. We have Route 22, which is a key bus route today, but would continue to be a high frequency service. Route 22 changes a little bit in that it would no longer serve Ruggles, but at Roxbury Crossing, it would take the left on Tremont Street and terminate somewhere that we still need to figure out in Longwood Medical Area. And then Route 23 is a key bus route that would remain a high frequency route operating between Ruggles and Nubian and Ashmont via Washington Street. We would continue to operate that route as we do today. Finally, some medium frequency routes. Route 26, we would change, instead of being the loop route that operates today, we would have it connect Fields Corner and Matapan Station via a new connection via Norfolk Avenue, Norfolk Street and Codman Square. And then in Dorchester, we would propose a new circulator route. We're calling this Route 20, that would serve between Fields Corner and Ashmont, serving the Neponset neighborhoods. That largely would replace routes 201 and 202 today. Finally, there are some connections from Quincy that come in to Fields Corner and Ashmont Station, those being Route 210 that would operate along Adams Street, and Route 210 would operate along Galavan Boulevard, and Route 215 would operate along Adams Street. Next slide, please. Moving to Matapan, I'll start with some of the routes that I just talked about, namely Route 26, which provides that connection from Matapan to Fields Corner via Codman Square. The three high frequency routes serving this area would be Route 22, which travels along the northern edge of Matapan along Talbot Ave. Again, that would go to the Longwood Medical Area as opposed to, as it does today, Ruggles Station. Route 28 would continue to operate up and down Blue Hill Avenue, connecting Matapan to Nubian Station. It too would no longer serve Ruggles Station, but would go from Nubian to Roxbury Crossing Station to serve Longwood Medical Area, and then up Brookline Avenue to terminate in Kenmore. Route 31 would be promoted to a high frequency service. Route 31 operates between Forest Hills and Matapan. Nothing would change in terms of the routing of 31, just an improvement in its frequency. Route 21 would also remain as it does today, largely at the same frequency levels, operating between Ashmont and Forest Hills. Other routes that serve the edges of Matapan, to the north, we see Route 14. This would be a new connection, operating in this section as the 14 does today, but instead of terminating in Roslindale Square, it would terminate in Cleary Square. And instead of going up Warren Street, it would go up Blue Hill Avenue to Dudley Street. And then Route 24 would operate as it does today between Ashmont and Matapan. But when it is extended to the west, it would connect to points in Dedham and terminate in the Dedham Mall. Next slide, please. There is a lot that's happening in Roxbury. Many of these routes are ones that I mentioned previously, including the 28, the 23, the 15, the 12, the 16. Routes that I haven't mentioned yet include the 66, which we would keep mostly as it operates today, operating between Nubian and Harvard Square. We would change the routing slightly to better serve Longwood Medical Area, but that would be the only change on the 66. Other routes that pass through here, the 42, as I mentioned, provides that connection between Forest Hills and Nubian, but we would extend it up to Broadway via Albany Street. The 14 is that new service along Blue Hill Avenue instead of Route 45, as it happens today. And this would provide a new connection to Cleary Square. Route 19 would replace Route 44 service along Humboldt Avenue. Route 19 would connect to Fields Corner Station and to Nubian Station along the way to Ruggles. And then one other new route that I hadn't mentioned yet is the 38. This would be a route between West Roxbury via Center Street and the Faulkner Hospital up into Jamaica Plain, serving the Orange Line at Jackson Square, and then connecting to Nubian. I think I covered everything. So let's go to the next slide. Longwood also has a lot of new service in it. 7 high frequency routes today that are under Bus Network Redesign that would operate as opposed to the 3 key bus routes that operate today. Many of these I mentioned previously, including the 15, the 28, the 12, the 22. One route that I did not mention yet is the 39. Today, the 39 goes up Huntington Avenue on the eastern edge of Longwood Medical Area and largely mirrors the E branch of the Green Line, while the 39 terminates at Copley Station, terminates at Back Bay Station, but serves Copley as well. Under this proposal, the 39 would be rerouted to directly pass through Longwood Medical Area and then cross the Charles River into Cambridgeport. The route would then continue providing a connection between Central Square and Union Square, and then also providing a connection between Union Square and Porter Square up in Cambridge. Other routes that would serve the Longwood Medical Area, Route 55 would serve the Fenway neighborhood as it does today, provide connections to the Green Line, either at Hines, when Hines is made accessible, or in the interim, we would route this likely via Kenmore. But the Route 55 would provide a new connection to Kendall MIT and the Red Line over the Charles River. And the 55 would extend to terminate someplace in the Longwood Medical Area, providing that new connection that does not exist today. Route 60 continues to serve Brookline Avenue as it does today. On the other end of Route 60, we were proposing to extend it to Newton Center from the Chestnut Hill Mall. Next slide, please. In Alston, Brighton, and Brookline, we have a couple routes that are key bus routes today that would continue to be high frequency services. Those include the 66, operating between Harvard and Nubian, and the 57, operating between Watertown and Kenmore. Those would operate much as they do today with high frequency service. One of the new high frequency routes serving Alston would be the 70. That would be elevated from its current middle of the road frequency. It operates between Waltham, and we would actually extend it from Central Square in Cambridge to Kendall Square to provide that new connection. And it would be a new high frequency service that does not operate at that level today. Route 86 would change in that it would only operate between Reservoir and Harvard Square, because the other section of the 86 today between Harvard and Sullivan Square is replaced by a high frequency Route 109 extension that I had mentioned. I believe I mentioned it earlier. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I did not mention the 109 because it didn't serve Boston, but I think it bears mentioning that the 109, which today operates between Sullivan Square and Linden Square via Broadway, serving Everett, that would extend through Sullivan Square along Washington Street and terminate in Harvard, making that entire corridor be a high frequency service, and that connection between Harvard and Everett, a high frequency service that does not exist today. Other routes that serve Alston, Brighton, the 64, we're proposing a minor change at the outer end of it. It terminates at Oak Square as it does today, but instead of winding its way through the neighborhood, we are proposing to stay on Faneuil Street for a more direct routing. And then we are showing this route when it gets up to Brighton Avenue to cut across to Cambridge Street via Boston Landing. This is a new development that is years away, but we would like to show how this route could serve that new development. Until that new development is ready, we would continue operating the 64 along Cambridge Street. And then towards in Brookline North, we have the 60 that I had mentioned previously that operates along this slide as it does today, but towards the western end would be extended to Newton Corner. And then Route 51, we would keep the routing as it is today, but this would be one of those changes where even though it is a lower frequency route, today it does not operate on Sunday. Under Bus Network Redesign, we would operate the 51 on Sunday. Next slide, please. Moving to the south, we have Jamaica Plain and Mission Hill. The 39, I had mentioned that previously. This provides the connection from Forest Hills up into Mission Hill, but instead of mirroring the E branch and going into Back Bay and Copley, it would extend into Cambridge. I had mentioned Route 38. This replaces portions of Route 41 that operate today along Center Street, connecting to Jackson Square and Nubian Station, and then to the south, providing that connection to West Roxbury via Center Street and the Faulkner Hospital. And then I think it just bears repeating that from Forest Hills, routes that are not high frequency today would be promoted to high frequency. These include the 16 and the 31. Next slide, please. Looking at Brookline South into Roslindale and West Roxbury. Here's an example where we would combine two routes, those being the 35 and the 36, into they would remain two separate routes, but where they come together, we would coordinate the schedules such that they could provide a high frequency level of service in that shared trunk. Route 36 in this proposal would continue to serve VA Hospital, but would be extended down VFW Parkway to terminate at Dedham Mall. Route 35 would operate as it does today via Center Street, and then also as it does today, terminating at Dedham Mall. But because those two routes have similar run times, we think that we could coordinate them to provide high frequency service where they come together. Along Washington Street, there are several routes, including Route 34 and 34E, both of which under this proposal, we are suggesting to extend to Legacy Place and provide the connection to Legacy Place. Also along Washington Street, we have routes 40 and 50. Both of these routes would be extended. Route 40 would be extended into portions of Dedham along High Street, continuing and providing a connection to Wolcott Square. And Route 50 would be extended into down through Cleary Square to serve the Fairmount neighborhood, and also terminating in Wolcott Square. And then routes 51 would remain, as I mentioned, as it does today, but with Sunday service. Route 52 would change slightly. It would take the portion of Route 37 that is not shown in this map that would not be operating. By not operating Route 37, it allows us to coordinate routes 35 and 36 more easily. But the 52 would cover the area of the 37 that is unique to the 37. And the 52 would terminate at Charles River Loop. Next slide, please. Finally, in Hyde Park, we have those routes that I mentioned previously, routes 40 and 50, that serve portions of Dedham and Cleary Square going into the Fairmount neighborhood, both terminating at Wolcott Square. We have Route 24 that I mentioned back in the Matapan slide. This is continuing via River Street, connecting Cleary Square to Dedham, all the way to Dedham Center and Dedham Mall, with a new connection that does not exist today. And then Route 32, as a key bus route today, it would remain a high frequency service operating between Forest Hills and Wolcott Square. And then finally, Route 14. Here is the southern terminus of Route 14, as I had mentioned previously, in Cleary Square, but then continuing up Blue Hill Avenue, American Legion Highway to Blue Hill Avenue, terminating at Nubian. All right, I think that's the last slide. I know that was a lot that we just threw at you, but we certainly will have ample opportunity for discussions in the small group sessions, and I will hand it back to Caroline.
Thank you, Rob. Quite amazing that you can do that so well. All right, so I'm going to go through the next few slides relatively quickly. I might skip over some stuff. It's mostly just on kind of timeline, but we can make sure, I just want to make sure we have, extra time for breakout groups and Q&A at the end. So if I don't get to something, please feel free to ask a question about it. All right, so just as a reminder for folks on our project timeline, we are now in the outreach phase on the draft network map, and we are planning to take in all of this input, some of which we're receiving tonight, but we have a lot of other public outreach activities, and then taking those comments and bringing them back to the public and our board in the fall of 2022, and beginning implementation in phases starting in the spring of 2023. We have done a lot of engagement to date. I won't talk about all of this in detail, but we're really excited to build upon all of this work and amp up our outreach for this phase of the process as well. In terms of other outreach activities, I just wanted to remind folks that we are also holding what we're calling station open houses, where we will have technical staff at different stations. We've already conducted some of these already, where you can come and talk to staff and learn more about the project and your routes. We are also doing street team outreach at different stations as well. We will also be holding an in-person meeting at the bowling building on July 19th, as well as 2 public hearings in July, one of which will be virtual and one of which will be in person. So you can find out kind of everything you need to know on the project at mbta.com/BNRD. We have multiple ways to provide feedback, so I just want to go over them really quickly. One is, and probably the best way to provide your feedback, is through our online survey, mbta.com/BNRD feedback. There you can find the full list of all of our events at mbta.com/BNRD events. And then you can always email us at the Better Bus Project email address, or we also have the option to submit comments via mail or to leave a voice message. I also just wanted to flag that you can learn more about other bus initiatives on our Better Bus Project website, mbta.com/betterbus. and definitely reach out to our public outreach team as well for any broader public outreach questions, publicengagement@mbta.com. With that, I will now turn it over to Reagan to talk us through the breakout groups.
Thank you, Caroline. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be holding these small group discussions to get your feedback and ideas. I know that some of you have already posted some comments and questions in the chat, but please ask those in the breakout rooms. And if they aren't answered, just you can repeat them when we come back here for Q&A. There aren't going to be differences in the rooms with the exception of the non-English language room. And as a reminder, if you prefer the non-English language breakout room and did not indicate that preference earlier, please message us now. So on screen, you will see the key questions that we will have for discussion. I am not going to read them out loud right now because I want to get you into your breakout sessions as soon as possible. But each breakout room will have a group leader who will facilitate the discussion, and the conversation will focus on your feedback. There are note takers in each session as well. Next slide, Caroline. So you're automatically going to be placed into the breakout rooms. And it says here that the group discussion will last until 7:15, but I think due to the lateness of the hour, we're going to go until 7:20, Caroline. And then we'll come back here and we'll do some final last Q&A and wrap up and then let you all get, well, I was going to say get home, but I guess everyone is home or wherever they are. So I will ask right now, Caroline, you can stop the screen share, and Amanda, can you pause the recording? And so welcome back, everybody. Thank you all for participating in the discussions. We appreciate your feedback and we'll take everything we heard tonight into consideration. I am going to first walk through the instructions on these next slides about how Q&A will work, but I will ask everyone to hold their comments and questions and keep your hands lowered until I finish. I will cue you when it is time, because first we're going to ask elected officials to speak and then open the meeting up to others. So next slide, please. So if you would like to share a comment or ask a question, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to submit the typed question or comment. You would submit these to the Ask a Question, and we will alternate between reading those questions and comments already submitted and recognizing those who want to pose a question verbally. Please be brief so we can hear from as many people as possible. People who wish to share a question or comment verbally can press the raised hand button. For those joining on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing star and then the number 9. All attendees who speak Spanish or Mandarin, please raise your hand to provide your comments and questions verbally for interpreters to hear and repeat your comments. And with that being said, I forgot to instruct everyone. If you go to the interpretation button again, please make sure English language is selected as your language if you are an English language speaker. That resets after the breakout sessions. So when we recognize your name, you will be unmuted and you may speak. After you share your comment, we will lower your hand and you will then be returned to the muted state. So now, before we open the comment and question segment to the public, so I will say if you're not an elected official, if you could lower your hands right now. And then we would like to invite the elected officials in attendance or their staff to ask questions or make comments. So please use the raise hand feature so we can recognize and unmute you. So I do see Senator Collins. So Amanda, can you unmute Senator Collins? So you should be able to speak, Senator.
Yes, I'm not on video though. Is that possible?
I don't think it is the way we have it set right now.
Okay, well, let me first just start by saying, I mean, the Zoom meetings have to be virtual and not, I'm sorry, have to be hybrid at the very least. We can't just have this world of never being in person. I think that has to end. but with the MBTA as it relates to transparency and accountability. Right now, I don't feel like there's much. So let me start off by saying that after about a decade of advocacy on particular routes that have been totally disregarded, I think this proposal, particularly as it relates to routes number 7 and number 11, are non-starters. And I'm going to get into why, but that if, and as we submitted a letter, myself, Representative Beal, of opposition to this proposal for particularly the number 7 and number 11. I mean, basically, what the T has done in this proposal is cut out the number 4 and put on the backs of the number 7 bus riders the hopes and dreams of a north-south rail link to take it to North Station, and then through Charlestown to South Station, to Sullivan Square, literally at the edge of the city, whose congestion challenges are probably only met by Kosciuszko Circle. And so that's totally absurd that would be the bus route. The number 7 bus that takes loads of people in the morning, and for this to be the response from the T is quite frankly, it's startling. Again, the advocacy over the last 10 years from the community, local officials, and have tried with the partnership with the MBTA seems to have failed. So if this is the proposal and it doesn't get scrapped, it will be looking to make corrective action legislatively. But the number 11 bus as well. Number 11 bus serves residents of South Boston and directly to Tufts Medical Center, many of whom have that as their place of employment. And many of our seniors, persons with disabilities, and those suffering from chronic illness, getting direct access that they otherwise would not have. I know, my grandparents were no longer with us. That was when they didn't have a ride, they were going via number 11 as got my pediatrics there, took the number 11 bus, and generations and continue of residents and families that need and use Tufts as patients or for employment. So to take that away and put them on, multiple sources of transit to get to that is just, again, absurd. And so there's not much to get into of the critiques as it relates to adjustments. It's more of a scrapping these plans, going to the drawing board. And if the T is not willing to do that, then we'll take whatever legislative action that we have to. But for this to be the product of feedback that has been received by the MBTA, I think is absurd, and that it's preposterous to think that you're going to improve service on the number 7 bus by taking it through the city during commuting hours to North Station to make it everyone's dream complete instead of the north-south rail link. I don't know how logically the conclusion was come to, but to me it doesn't really matter, because it's for non-starter for us as legislators who deal with the T and the budget and the capital. This is just something that we're going to have a continued debate on beyond this meeting, and for this actually to be proposed, again, I'm quite startled. But the letter is on record of our opposition. We hope that the T abandons it and starts from scratch with the community at the forefront. And if not, we'll have other ways to deal with that. But that's our position, and we ask that the T take those off the table.
Thank you, Senator. Caroline, I don't know, is there anything you want to add?
No, just thanks for the comment. I know there was a lot there, so.
I know that we're getting late. Caroline, are you okay if we extend the meeting? Because I know there's still lots of people with questions. Maybe we could go a bit longer than 7:30.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So I see that Kennedy from Councillor Bach's office is here. Amanda, could you unmute Kennedy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you again to the Better Bus Project team for a great presentation in the way that you've engaged the community so far. I'll be brief because I gave these comments in the breakout session as well, but I just wanted to speak on behalf of Councillor Bach, who hopes to attend a later session. that we are really excited about the increase in service across the board and the expansion of connections for a lot of folks. Councillor Bach represents the West End, Beacon Hill, Back Bay, Fenway, Mission Hill, and Longwood medical area neighborhoods throughout Boston. And so there are a lot of really important connections that the new maps are outlining. However, we do really want to advocate for the importance of continued downtown connections throughout her district in the city, particularly from the Fenway to Copley. We think that's a really important connection to maintain via bus service rather than just the Green Line. But again, thanks for a great presentation and for outlining this draft map.
Thank you so much for your comments. I am going to turn it to Kimberly, because I believe you're from Senator Brownsberger's office. Amanda, if you could unmute Kimberly.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kimberly. I'm with Senator Brownsberger, and I want to just echo some of the comments that Kennedy made. That in our office, we're really excited about the extension of service, the increased service and high frequency service. A lot of our constituents throughout our district, the parts in Boston and those just outside of it, are really excited about the routes and do have some concerns on what the changes will look like in the day-to-day, but really appreciate all the effort on behalf of the MBTA and the Better Bus team working to get that feedback. So thanks so much for having these meetings, and we'll be at as many as we can make it to.
Thank you so much. Caroline, I know some people have some questions about where they can direct feedback. Do you mind going to the next slide? I think that has some of that information.
And it looks like Ben is also here representing Senator Edwards too.
Yes. So Amanda, can you unmute Ben?
Hi, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out and voicing their concerns, as well as the MBTA for hosting this meeting. The only question I have is if there's any information on, how many people might be affected by some of the buses in the senator's district that are losing service, such as the 121, for instance. We've heard from quite a few constituents that, that's a bus that they take or they've seen quite a few people taking. Is there any information on, people on the numbers of people that might be losing some service on some of the buses that they take?
Yeah, Ben, we'd be happy to set up some time to walk through some numbers with you. So feel free to get in touch with us via the Better Bus Project email, or I can also get in touch too.
So thank you. I think I see Matt Moran from Boston Transportation Department. So Amanda, can you unmute Matt?
Hey everyone, good to see you all here tonight, and just want to say thank you very much for a great presentation, great discussion, and as Reagan said, my name is Matt Moran with the Boston Transportation Department. I just want to echo what a lot of people are saying. I think there is a lot of very compelling, very interesting, very good stuff in this framework, and we look forward to continuing to work with the MBTA, with MassDOT, to see a lot of these improvements through. We will be submitting comments from the City of Boston, from the Boston Transportation Department, around sort of this bus network redesign framework. And a lot of the framework will be in the context of Go Boston 2030, which is the city's long-term transportation vision for how to create a more equitable, just, and vibrant city, and one that's much better connected with better transit and better bus connections throughout. We see a lot of good in what we have here today. For example, the city has been advocating for years for a Matapan to LMA connection, and we see that's included. We've been advocating for a number of years for a North Station to Seaport bus link, and through the T7, we see that that's included. And we see that there's a number of other routes which are brand new, which connect different parts of the city that today are very disparate. So, for example, the Back Bay to Columbia Point connection. There are a few areas that we want to continue to work with you on. As was noted, the Longwood medical area discussion is one thing that we are keen to sort of unwrap and understand more of the nuances. Certain bus routes that we think need a little bit more attention, like the 39 and the 55, but overall, really excited to be here tonight and to be working with you all. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. So Caroline, we do have a few written comments, and then I think we can do some more of the verbal comments, I think, at this point.
Great.
One of the questions that is, I think maybe everyone would want to know is, how does someone know if the feedback was incorporated into the next draft? What's that process look like?
Yeah, and sorry, I went through the timeline kind of quickly because I wanted us to get to the breakouts. So we will be coming back with, I think we have planned at least 2 public meetings in the fall to present what the final map looks like. So there will be information then.
Thank you. And this next question might be for Rob, which is a question about bus bunching and about whether, I think because there are longer routes in this map, and whether or not that makes the bunching more likely than with the shorter routes.
Thanks for that question. So one of the reasons that we are really invested in transit priority is to avoid bus bunching. With transit priority, and this would include bus lanes, this would include signal priority. These are the things that allow us to maintain that space between routes and avoid as much as possible, though inevitably some bus bunching will happen. But transit priority allows us to space buses out more evenly because the trips, in terms of their time, it's more regular.
Thank you, Rob. I think now, Caroline, I'm going to turn to some of the people with their hands raised, although someone did just message me and ask me if there's a deadline to submit feedback. And I think it's the end of July, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, had that one right.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think Rita, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I did not scroll all the way up to the top. Some people have been waiting very patiently. So Mela, Amanda, can you unmute Mela, please?
Hello. Sorry, I was in the breakout room and somehow closed out when I was about to speak. I'm concerned about a number of things. Some of them are chopping up routes and then making people get on a train and then they have to pay more money for their commute. Like some of the proposals to, like the gentleman mentioned about Burlington, you have no bus service going out there, and then you have to go through 3 or 4 different changes to get where you want to go. I have to kind of echo what Nick Collins said about a lot of these changes that are being proposed are just, this is not a question, this is a statement. A lot of these proposals are actually going to cause more harm than good. And some of the bus routes that that you have proposed to take the end off. I'm concerned about the 39 bus route, the 14 bus route, the 55 bus route, the bus routes going out, the 37. The recommendations I think were good. The T-Rise Union will be submitting a letter, but we don't want to see things like cutting off the beginning section where there's no other bus service serving an area and then deciding that you want to change the way that the bus route runs and leave all those people out there stranded. These are not good plans. And I would also like to know what happens to our recommendations after we make them and then we see a map with all those same things on there. And why did we go to the meeting and say things and then you just kept on going on with however you came up with these things? There will be some meetings in the community. I've been away for 2.5 weeks, but we would like to invite some folks from your team to come to the meeting and to explain some of the route changes in Roxbury, Dorchester, Matapan, and going into Roslindale as well, and Hyde Park.
So thank you. First of all, I know Caroline always likes to be invited to meetings. So I think.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
there, Mela. Let us know.
exactly. Caroline, is there anything you want to respond to specifically? I know you'll have the follow-up meeting, but.
Yeah, no, I think Mela, we're happy to come to some meetings. I know we've had a few discussions already about how we can partner with you on that. So we'd love to pick that back up and definitely make sure we're hearing from you and others on that. So we'll be following up to do that.
So in the interest of time, and I apologize that we're running out of time, but I hear that the breakout room discussions were really good. There's another written question, because I think it's a clarification that I want to be sure we get to. And then I think, Caroline, I'll let you do the wrap up. Apologies to those who are still waiting to speak, but I will point to the feedback form and all of the different ways that are on screen now to provide comments. You can also provide your comments through the Ask Questions Now button too. We are reading all written comments, even if they are not being read aloud in the meeting. But I will start with a question about the number 7, because I think it's been brought up a few times tonight. Will it only be on First Street, or will it go to Broadway and First Street as it does today? Rob, that might be a question for you. Again, I'm going to spotlight you.
Yes, I can feel that. So the answer is that the Route 7 would operate as it does today, which is via Broadway.
Great. That was very short and sweet. I also want to note that all of the maps and the links that you see and all the changes that Rob went through are on the mbta.com BNerd website, BNRD. It's this link under how to stay informed. There are maps by neighborhood. There are interactive maps that you can do. There are trip planner tools you can use, and there is sort of a giant regional map as well. So you can look all of these up and look at your routes in more specifically. And the neighborhood booklets are available, I believe, in 9 languages, Caroline, correct?
Yes.
So with that, Caroline, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Yeah, and apologies again for not getting to everyone tonight. As Reagan did mention, I'll just repeat, if there's some comments or questions we didn't get to, do feel free to drop them in the Ask Me a Question link, or however Reagan explained to do that. And I will just also again flag the feedback form here as a really good way for us to capture everything. So, you know, we are tagging all comments, and our hope is that, you know, when we come back in the fall to present what we think the new final map should be, that we'll be able to kind of run through kind of the categories of comments we received and how we responded to them. So we are trying to really organize all of the comments we're getting through different means. I did also just want to really quick, there was a question about what street teams are. So I just wanted to clarify that too before closing, because there are so many different ways to provide input at different events. So street teams are similar to our station open houses, though they are more kind of quick touch points with riders while they're using the system, where you can talk to staff while you're waiting for a bus, and provide input, or really just you know, get more information so that you can get more involved with the project overall. We have learned that going to where riders are is really the best way to hear directly from our bus riders. So we have made a big effort here to do a lot of that work as part of our outreach plan. So just wanted to clarify that. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us tonight and spending your time with us talking about Bus Network Redesign. We really appreciate all comments that we heard. As the general manager said at the beginning of the meeting, this map will only get better by hearing from you all. And we do expect the map to change meaningfully based on the comments that we have received tonight and from other events and other outreach opportunities that we have. So just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us and participating tonight. So thanks again, and have a good and great rest of your evening. Thank you.